Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to the Battle for Azeroth Arcane Mage preview. With the removal of the artifact weapon, the Arcane Mage gameplay went back to being very basic and essentially being two-button. So to spice things up a little bit, a lot of the talents were changed, some of the passives were changed, but we don't really see any new abilities that were added or removed. In this video, we'll take a look at all of the actives, passives, and talents that were added, removed, or changed in any major way. And then I will show you some potential talent builds and give you my overall impressions on the spec. Nothing was removed from the Arcane Mage as far as baseline abilities go, and the only thing added was clear casting. This used to be part of Arcane Missiles, but they kind of removed that component of it and made it into its separate passive. So for every 180 mana you spend, you have a 1% chance to gain clear casting, making your next Arcane Missiles or Arcane Explosion free and channel 20% faster. So like I said before, this replaces the proc that it was incorporated in Arcane Missiles before. For things that were changed, Arcane Barrage was changed to deal 30% increased damage per arcane charge, down from previous 60%. Arcane Blast was also changed to increase mana cost by 100% per arcane charge instead of 125%. But now you also cast 8% faster per arcane charge. Arcane Missiles now has a mana cost and is no longer affected by Arcane Charge at all. Displacement was slightly nerfed and is now only usable within 40 yards of your blink location. Evocation was changed to increase your mana regen by 750% while it is being channeled, instead of just returning a flat 100% mana. Our Mastery was also changed to only increase the damage of our Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage, rather than various abilities. Now let's take a look at the talents, because this is where we see a few of the more major changes. Amplification was changed to make your Arcane Missiles fire an additional missile during clear casting procs. Then Word of Power was removed and was replaced by the rule of threes. When you gain your third Arcane Charge, the cost of your next Arcane Blast or Arcane Missiles is reduced by 100%. In Tier 2, Shimmer was nerfed from a 15-second recharge to a 20-second recharge, and you're also no longer able to shimmer your missiles and evocation, because if you cast Shimmer during those, it will just interrupt them. And I think this is because they changed Slipstream, which now allows you to cast while moving if you have a clear casting procs on your Arcane Missiles, and you're also able to move while you have evocation up. Tier 3 was unchanged, and in Tier 4 we only see a slight nerf. Resonance was changed to increase the damage of your barrage by 15% per target, and this is down from the previous 25%. Tier 5 is unchanged, and then in Tier 6 we see Unstable Magic and Erosion removed. Reverberate is a new talent that causes your Arcane Explosion to have a chance to generate an extra Arcane Charge if it hits at least 3 targets. Touch of the Magi is a new proc-based talent that has a chance to proc on your target, and during its duration, 20% of the total damage you deal to it will be accumulated, and after the debuff expires on the target, it will explode and deal the damage to all nearby enemies. In Tier 7, Temporal Flux was replaced by Time Anomaly, which is another proc-based talent that has a chance to grant you either Arcane Power for 10 seconds, Evocation for 1, or immediately grant you 4 Arcane Charges. And you can immediately tell which one of these is best. Obviously, the Arcane Power one. Baseline Arcane Power only lasts 10 seconds. So essentially when you proc it, you just get an extra minute and a half cooldown. The 1 second Evo is sometimes nice if you're mana starved. And then getting those 4 Arcane Charges immediately, you can't really control it. And especially during your burst phase, you will be sitting at 4 Arcane Charges no matter what, so you won't even notice that it procced. Before I go into showing you an actual talent build, let's talk a little bit about how Arcane Mage plays, because if you haven't played this spec in the past, it is one of those outliers that is actually a little bit weird to play, because it mostly comes down to mana management. And as far as I know, none of the other ranged DPS really rely on their mana, other than maybe Warlocks. This means that Arcane Mage consists of 2 alternating phases, your burn phase and your mana conservation phase. In your burn phase, you use up your Rune of Powers, you use all of your cooldowns, and you just go ham and cast Arcane Blast, and then whenever you get missile procs, you use those up. But then after all your cooldowns are over and you have to cast Evocate to restore your mana, then you go into your mana conservation phase, where every time you get to 4 arcane charges, you're going to Arcane Barrage, because you want to keep your mana around 80 to 90% until your arcane power comes back up and your runes of power come back up, and then you can go into another burn phase. The first build here is a single target build, where in tier 1 we take amplification, because obviously for single target we want our arcane missiles to do more damage. And then in tier 3 you take Rune of Power, because like I said before, Arcane Mage has a huge burst phase, and then during your mana conservation phase you don't really do all that much damage. So being able to pack more damage into your burn phase is much more beneficial than having an overall damage boost from Incanter's Flow. Then in tier 4, you can either take Charged Up or Resonance. If you're using Arcane for boss fights, then you are most likely going to want to take Charged Up, because you're not able to start the fight with 4 Arcane charges. But then if you're doing Dungeons and Mythic Plus, then Resonance will probably be better, since you're always able to go into a boss fight with 4 charges already. And then if there happen to be any adds on the fight, you also gain that extra benefit. In tier 6 for single target, Touch of the Magi is absolutely insane when it procs. If you get back-to-back procs on this during your burn phase, your burst damage will be absolutely insane. If you don't get procs, obviously your burst and your damage will be a lot lower, but it's worth taking the risk. And then in tier 7, this is kind of an interesting choice, because Time Anomaly is a gamble. Anytime you take this talent, it is a gamble what you're going to get. If you get Arcane Power and you proc it back to back, that will be an absolute insane amount of damage. But if you proc Evocate or you gain 4 Arcane charges, getting those procs doesn't feel all that great. Overpower is maybe less burst damage if you get good RNG, but it is much more consistent than taking Time Anomaly. So the rotation for this is very simple. You want to cast Charged Up before the fight starts, because you want to start with 4 Arcane charges. And then as soon as the fight starts, you want to drop your Rune of Power, and then Arcane Power together with Presence of Mind, and get those 2 Arcane Blasts immediately in, and then just keep casting Arcane Blast and use your Arcane Missile procs if you get them. And since you're going to be lusting, you should drop your second Rune of Power as soon as your first one is over, just to keep that huge damage window going. And then once you're done with your burn phase, you get down to about 10% mana, then you evocate, and then you go into the conservation phase until your Arcane Power comes back up, and you're able to go into the second burn phase again. The second build here is our AoE build. In the first tier, we don't really have a good choice for AoE. Amplification is not good because we never use missile procs on AoE, since we're going to be spending all of our clear casting procs on Arcane Explosion. Then Rule of 3 again, on AoE you don't want to cast Arcane Blast or missiles, so again that just kind of rules out this talent. That just leaves us with Arcane Familiar, so it does a little bit of damage and we have more mana. If you're going for a pure AoE build, I would take Arcane Familiar. If you're perhaps going for a more balanced build where you want to do some more priority damage perhaps, then you can take Rule of 3s. In tier 2, you can take Shimmer or Slipstream, that's completely up to you. And then tier 3, again Rune of Power, because we just want that burst AoE damage. Tier 4, Resonance is very good here, because for AoE, we will essentially be alternating Arcane Explosions and Arcane Barrages, so this just buffs our Arcane Barrage damage. Then tier 6, again we take Reverberate, because we want to generate as many Arcane charges as fast as possible, so we can dish out more Barrages. And then tier 7, you can take either Overpower or Arcane Orb. Overpower is a little bit more consistent damage. Orb will most likely just come down to tuning. If the damage on it is tuned well, then you might take it. If the damage on it is undertuned, then you're just not going to take this talent. Now for the AoE rotation, this is very difficult, but just bear with me here. I will try to walk you through it slowly. So what you're going to do is walk up to your targets, so in Mythic Plus I assume just trash mobs. You walk up to melee range because you want to Arcane Explosion, so you want to be in melee range. And then once you get there, you start casting Arcane Explosion, And when you get to 4 charges, you drop your Rune of Power, then you press Barrage, and then you Arcane Explosion again. And then you keep pressing it until you get to 4 charges, and then you Arcane Barrage, and you repeat this process over and over and over until the mobs are dead. So like you can see here on the screen, this is a very complicated and in-depth rotation, but I'm sure if you put your mind to it, it can be done. So obviously I'm kind of kidding here. The AoE rotation is very simplistic, but if you want to do more priority damage, then you can get some Arcane Blasts in there, especially if you're using their Rule of Threes talent or some Arcane Missiles. So for example, you would do that if there's one big mob with a bunch of small health mobs around it, like on Fire, where you would Pyroblast instead of Flame Strike, even though one of them technically is more damage. So you don't really have all that many choices, and then Arcane is mostly about that simplistic AoE and then awesome burst single target. So what are my overall impressions of the Arcane Mage? I really like that it's a simplistic spec, because Fire is already pretty reaction-based playstyle, so you have to react to your heating up and your hot streak procs. Arcane is more of a straightforward playstyle where the only proc you really have to react to is your Arcane Missiles, but that is one thing that you have to set up. Other than that, our single target burst damage is absolutely insane, as you can see from the clips that I have throughout this video. This is probably the highest bursting class that I played so far. Our sustain damage obviously falls off a little bit, but if you're doing mythic dungeons, that burst damage will absolutely annihilate bosses, and it's extremely fun to see that on the damage meters. For AoE, like I mentioned, it's very simple to play, but that hasn't really changed. You just spam your Arcane Explosion and then Barrage when you get to 4 stacks. But other than that, you know, there's not much going on there. So as far as the talent tree goes, overall it's pretty well balanced and well designed. Mirror Image doesn't really feel great on Arcane because it's all about boosting your own damage. It's kind of similar to Fire, where we don't really want to just have like pets passively attacking our target. We want to multiply our own damage because we have other multipliers that stack together. So again, I'd like to see Mirror Image being replaced by something. Also, the change with Shimmer, now that you can't shimmer your Arcane Missiles or your Evocate, feels very, very awkward, because if you're evocating and you're running Shimmer and you get a mechanic on you, then you have to interrupt your evocate. This is the first time where I actually think that people might start taking Slipstream instead of Shimmer. Then for the last tier, Time Anomaly is one of those talents that I don't think has been properly balanced yet, because it's only been introduced in a recent patch. So the arcane power that you get lasts 10 seconds. That is 100% of the duration, as if you were to just press arcane power on your own. Then the evocate part of it lasts for 1 second. Our evocate lasts for 6, so you're only getting 1/6 of a full evocate's benefit. And then the 4 arcane charges, that just feels basically useless to me. As far as Touch of Magi goes, which is the other new talent, it's very RNG. So I get that they wanted RNG in Arcane, but it makes our pools vary by a very, very large amount. Some pools I saw my Touch of Magi do about 10% on single target. Other pools it did up to 40% of my damage on single target. Now obviously this is over short dungeon fights. In raid fights I assume it will be much more even, and you might get procs, you know, more distributed throughout the fight. So do I see Arcane Mage being used in Mythic raiding? Well, this will depend mostly on the tuning, because like I mentioned in my Fire Mage video, all 3 of the mage specs have very similar toolkits. They all have Shimmer, they all have Ice Block. Arcane Mage does have Greater Invis, which is pretty useful. But other than that, it's pretty much the same toolkit. So whichever spec does more damage will be the spec that will be used. And this will also be slightly impacted by the type of boss fights. If there are a lot of boss fights that have burn phases where they maybe stacked damage multipliers on them and you have a limited duration, then Arcane might shine, because Arcane obviously has the huge burst phase and then kind of really drops off after that. For Mythic Plus, Arcane Mage is probably not going to be used too much, because even though it does have that insane burst damage, you do have to be in melee range to do your AoE damage, and that is kind of an issue in dungeons. because obviously one of the benefits of being a ranged class is that you're able to kind of stand out away from all of the danger, all of the cleave abilities, so you're not in imminent danger whenever you're casting something. Then if you have to be constantly in melee range, you're a little bit more risky and you have a higher chance of dying, but if the damage is there, like I said before, Arcane Mage will be used. Thank you for watching the BFA Arcane Mage preview, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and sub to the channel, and if you'd like to support me directly, then you can check out my Patreon, which is also linked in the description box. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.